I'm gonna go live once it hits. It usually takes a while, or it takes a few seconds to load the stream. So feel free to, if you just came in, let us know where you're calling in from and what kind of designer you are in the chat. And what you're most excited to learn about today. Cool, and we are live. Welcome, everyone. Thank you all for taking some time today to join us on your Saturday, whether it's the morning or it's 12 a.m. like in Indonesia. Thank you all for coming, or in India. Cool. It's very cool. We have global buddies from all over the world. And I'm Grace. I founded Design Buddies in April 2020 to make some buddies in design. And since then, we've kind of had so many events, so many members, over 14,000 members. We just launched our merch store yesterday, so it's super exciting. And yeah, I'm super excited to have Michaela on today. Mitchell, another member of Design Buddies, actually introduced us, and we had a very wholesome chat, and it was really great talking to her. And we're super excited to have her on today. And Michaela Ternasky-Holland is an Emmy, Webby, and Sherfield DocFest award-winning documentarian who combines experimental content with traditional mediums. And she works with clients as a consultant and creative strategic, and she is also a recognized public speaker who presented at international conferences, public institutions, and podcasts. And her work has been featured by Time, Forbes, The Guardian, King's Film Festival, New York Public Library, Tribeca Film Festival for more. So we're all super excited to have her on today, and I'll leave the floor to you, Michaela.
Awesome. Thank you, Grace. Hi, all. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you for joining us on a Saturday morning, afternoon, even maybe a Sunday morning, wherever you are in the world. It's so amazing to see how these technologies allow us to meet and congregate and learn from each other, no matter where we are geographically. And I just want to take a moment to honor the fact that I'm currently on Karnasi and Lenape land, originally made and developed by those Indigenous people. So that means I'm currently in New York City. And I'm really excited to be here to talk to you all a little bit about experience design. This workshop is called the Building Blocks for Experience Design. So if a lot of you are, seasoned experienced designers, this might feel a little bit like an intro course, but that's always fun. As a dancer and a performer, I know that sometimes it's the best to go back to basic ballet to learn and relearn and rethink about our basics. And for anyone who's new to experience design, don't worry, we're going to start at the very beginning. Yeah, and I'd like to just also start today while I start sharing my screen by saying this is a safe space for everybody. So this is going to be a space where we say yes and. There might be some moments where we feel a little uncomfortable with what we're doing. We have objects. Michaela's saying if you'd like to share in the chat, share the chat. If she's saying unmute yourself, unmute yourself. And that's all going to be participatory. That's all going to be up to you. But I just encourage you that if there's any time you're feeling resistance to what's happening, if you're like, I don't get it, I'm getting frustrated, don't get upset with yourself. Don't say no. Try to push through that discomfort. If you think about anytime we're trying to have a breakthrough or break through a wall, sometimes there's a little discomfort that has to happen. Sometimes learning creates a breakthrough for us because we're building new pathways in our brains. We're doing something new that we might not be as comfortable with. So just really thinking about this as like a yes and space, as a safe space for everybody. This is something that I learned from my time in theater. So for example, if we're doing something uncomfortable, instead of saying no and walking away, we say yes, and I'm uncomfortable, or yes, and would I be able to do something else, or yes, and I'm here learning. So just a couple little ways to sort of prep the space for all of us here today as we're in a shareable, learnable Zoom call. And then for anyone who's out there on the YouTube world who's watching and participating as well. Cool. So Grace gave me an amazing intro. Thank you, Grace. I'm just going to go briefly into a little bit of my background just to give you all a little bit more context. And this will be the most talkity part of this workshop. So I started my work As a dancer and a performer, I worked for Disney, I worked for SeaWorld, I worked for Legoland, and I started to realize that, there was something about these immersive, interactive theme park environments that a lot of the storytelling that I was learning in school for journalism and nonfiction and documentary was missing. And that to me there was this like immersive, interactive experience where people could get lost in the story. Like people could go and get lost at Disneyland, or people could go and get lost at SeaWorld. So I decided to pursue a hybrid career of sorts where I started blending virtual reality, augmented reality with journalism. And that landed me my first big career job at Life magazine, Time magazine, sort of this big umbrella where we worked on the initiative called Life VR. And that was where I got to produce a lot of really amazing historical experiences like Remembering Pearl Harbor, futuristic experiences like cycling Pathways to Mars with Buzz Aldrin. We worked on holograms, we worked on augmented reality. We did all this really fun, amazing work in sports, in lifestyle. So while my background is more in journalism, there was an aspect of experience design that we did there. And then I kept going and decided to become a freelance journalist because I wanted to start talking and telling stories that were important and passionate for me. And that first story was a piece called Face to Face. It was about a woman who experienced domestic violence. She was a mother. And the piece premiered at Sheffield Doc Fest. And that piece actually included a physical installation as well as a virtual reality documentary. So that was when I really started to be able to blend physical world building alongside of digital world building. And then I continued, and one of my later projects right now is called Le Tao. And Le Tao premiered at all these wonderful festivals, but what was great about this project was it sort of is a culmination of a lot of my work because I'm very passionate about BIPOC storytelling. That's Black, Indigenous, people of color. And Le Tao is a partnership made with Yellow Boat of Hope Foundation, which is a nonprofit that helps children who can't get to school because they have to swim or they have to walk long distances. They provide children with transportation, and they also provide children with supplies. And as a Filipino American myself, it was really amazing to be able to tell the stories about people that I came from, and also be able to bring those stories to light using virtual reality. So that tells you just a little bit about my background and who I am and what I've done. These are some of the other clients I've worked with. And now we're going to jump into the actual workshop. So that was all just to establish some ethics and to give you a little bit of background on me. So the workshop today, we're going to get set up with 3 different items or objects. If you don't have those quite yet, go ahead and go grab those objects, those items. There's no prescription as to what the perfect object or item is. There's no need to fulfill any criteria. They're really supposed to be random objects. They can be objects you love, objects that are just sitting on your desk. So we're going to talk a little bit today. This is an interactive workshop. I hope I'm not just sitting here talking for the next 45 minutes to you all. So a couple ways you can share is in the chat. So you can always message in the chat some thoughts that you're having, or if I say, hey, would anyone like to share? And you feel more comfortable sharing in the chat, you're more than welcome to. And then of course, if you would like to actually turn your video on or have audio where you're sharing with us using your voice or using, your body, you're more than welcome to do that. Just please, for the sake of my amazing, wonderful Design Buddy admins, if you could raise your hand first, and they will then give you the opportunity to unmute yourself and do all of that good stuff. So just to let you know, if you do raise your hand, you may or may not have the opportunity to share. If you share in the chat, I'm going to do my best to check the chat and comment on the things you share. So that's a little bit about the setup. We're going to keep going. So let's talk first about language, because I want to make sure that we establish a baseline, a foundation for all of us to work from. These words mean many things to many people. So I'm not saying that these are the only ways we should think about these words, but for today, during this workshop, this is going to be an easier way for me to be able to communicate with you all. So first, experience. It's such a broad idea and it's such a broad term. There's UX designers who create experiences for people playing with phone apps or using phone apps. There's experience designers and people who create experiences for video games. There's people who create Buildings are an experience. A chair can be an experience. So Michaela, like, what is an experience today? So for us, an experience is a memory that is created from our many narratives. So for example, I go to a theme park with my family and we have this amazing, amazing family vacation and we take lots of photos. And a year later, we're talking about this theme park visit that we had. That is a memory. That was an experience. You know, maybe I don't remember what I ate for dinner yesterday, but I do remember this theme park experience that I had with my family. It's a memory. Um, Something that I really like to talk about too when I talk about experiences is also transformative experience. Some people think of this as behavioral change. This is something that is so impactful that it changes the way that you see the world. This can be going back to the theme park experience. You know, my little brother for the first time saw Star Wars. He didn't realize what Star Wars was, and now suddenly he's just obsessed. He watches Star Wars as much as he can. He buys as much Star Wars stuff as he wants. That would be a behavioral change based on a memory. A more social impact or documentary version of this would be, say, I watch this incredible documentary about the gymnasts in USA Gymnastics. And I start to realize maybe there's something about USA Gymnastics and not taking care of the gymnasts the way they should. So I sign a petition, I follow the Instagram, and I get weekly newsletters. That in a way has changed the behavior of what I've done because of this experience I've had, even though it was a film. It wasn't necessarily immersive, it wasn't exactly VR. So those are the first two vocabularies I kind of want to go over. Are there any questions so far? I'm going to check the chat. I know I talk a lot and I know I talk very fast, so I want to make sure everyone jumping in feels like we are good to go. Okay, great. I don't see any help me's in the chat. The next part of this is going to be sort of our building blocks. You can think about your three objects as building blocks. The first building block we're going to be discussing is onboarding. So onboarding is how we establish the boundaries and rules of the world. And the world, again, is just something very broad. This can be a video game. This can be a phone app. This can be a graphic design that you're building for a campaign. This could be a physical installation or an actual building. So onboarding, that's our first building block. The second building block we're going to be talking about today is a story. So the story is engaging and it's creating within the boundaries and the rules of your world. So this is engaging your audience. This is engaging your, maybe you have people who are working to build and create. You're engaging them, creating a story. And creating within it, you know, if you have this sort of video game and people can create their avatars, people can create sort of their characters, and then their characters can go and create relationships with other people. This is all being done within sort of this safe bubble of the rules and the boundaries that you've built in the world. So the story is how people engage and create within the world. And that's our second building block. Our third building block is aftercare. So I know a lot of people are like, Michaela, why do you use this term aftercare? It seems like a weird term. I think because what we need to remember is that as designers, as people who are building and creating, for people to come in and engage, we are actually taking care of people. Now, that's not to say we can't create, you know, a really sensationalized horror-based video game and that we're trying to make people feel scared. But in a way, we're still taking care of them, right? We're making sure that we're building a world that they can engage with, they can create. So to me, aftercare is a bit more tangibly compassionate than maybe the term offboarding, which is sort of the opposite of onboarding, right? There's onboarding and then there's offboarding. You can get on a roller coaster, you can ride the roller coaster, then you can get off the roller coaster. Well, this term aftercare is very similar, but instead of just getting off the roller coaster and forgetting about your audience and bringing the next group of people on board, maybe your aftercare is the people get off the roller coaster, they get to go see a picture of themselves, maybe they get to go buy something to say, I survived X roller coaster. It's just a way of thinking about how the experience that you've created can move into a new dimension, even if someone's leaving the world. So aftercare, those are our three building blocks today. Cool. So this is the time I get to stop talking at you, which is always my favorite time. And I actually get to engage with you all. So the first prompt I have today is choose one of your three objects. So it doesn't matter, again, what those three objects are. It doesn't matter, again, like what those objects do or represent. I just would like you to choose one of them. And I like to start sort of the prompt part of these experiences and workshops with a bit of a breath exercise. So go ahead and have your object. If you can hold it, maybe hold it in your hands. If you have to have it placed next to you or in front of you, place it somewhere comfortably close to you. And go ahead and just close your eyes. Take a minute. I'm going to turn off my video. And go ahead and just close your eyes. Maybe shake your hands out. If you're not standing up, maybe try and stand up. Choose the way your body's positioned. Maybe move your torso side to side. Maybe move your neck side to side. Take out any tension you might be feeling. And go ahead and just gently close your eyes. And take a deep breath in through your nose. Fill up all the space in your belly, the back of your spine. And take a nice deep breath out. Releasing all that air. And one more. Take a deep breath in. And take a deep breath out. Awesome. So those breath exercises are really just to kind of help center us, put us in a space where we feel ready to sort of open up and learn a little bit. The prompt I'm asking you all right now with this object is begin to think about this object as if you were someone trying to explain this object to someone from maybe a different universe, a different culture, a different ideology, a background, or history. So think of it as like, this is an object and an alien just landed on a planet, landed on your planet, and came over to your house and was like, what is this thing? What do you do with it? How do you do with it? And start to think about the ways you would explain the object to someone. Take a few minutes. This is no time to rush through. You can kind of think about things like, okay, well, if my object is an animal that is stuffed and represents a character on television, how would I go about explaining this stuffed animal who is a character on television to someone who's never seen a television? Maybe to someone who's never seen a stuffed animal. Maybe to someone who's never had, a stuffed animal of their own. So just start to think about how you would break apart some of the ways you explain things to people who don't necessarily have the same context and background as you. Maybe your object has familiar lingo. For example, mine is a hand weight. So I could be like, oh, this is a workout thing, a workout item. Someone would be like, what's a workout? Think about things that maybe are familiar lingo to you, but might not be a familiar lingo to them. Cool. Would anyone like to share their object, and would anyone like to explain their object to the rest of the group as if they were explaining it to an alien from outer space? I see Loretta has her hand up. And if you don't feel comfortable sharing with us as a group, you are more than welcome to put it in the chat.
Hello, I don't know if everybody can hear me.
Hi, Loretta, I can hear you.
Hi. Should I put on my camera to show my object, or should I just describe the object with the camera off and see if people can guess it?
If you feel comfortable turning your camera on and showing us your object, I would love that. If you feel more comfortable keeping your camera off, that's totally fine.
Oh, okay. So maybe I'll explain it first and then I'll turn my camera on to show it. I don't know.
That sounds great.
Okay. So I thought of it in the sense that I was like explaining it to an extraterrestrial. And how I started was that we have these things called bodies, and our bodies need to be able to be functional. And in order for our bodies to be functional, we need to provide them with substance that allows them to do certain things, that allows our organism to do certain things. So this object that I have is something that I put into my body. It might not be the best version of the thing that I should be putting into my body so that it can be functional, but it definitely completes me emotionally because it brings me joy when I eat it. And it also like gives me some nourishment. It's round, it's fried, it has sugar on top, and sugar is like a sweet substance that is high in energy, and it has like a cream in the middle.
So a couple of people in the chat asked, is it cookies? Is it candies? Is it a donut? They're dying to know.
Yeah, so it's like a donut.
That was wonderful. So Loretta, you onboarded me to your item, basically. You helped me understand and explain it. I would say my one idea or thought around it would be, you gave me a really great onboarding to the body and the way we need things in our bodies. I would say maybe to go even further into the onboarding process, if you had said something like, we nourish our bodies using this thing called a mouth, you know, and then things enter into my mouth and then my body absorbs them. Because again, thinking about an extraterrestrial, they might not know what a mouth is. Yeah. So I think that was like my one thought. But other than that, your communication on onboarding me to a donut was wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Julie, would you like to share?
Hi, I'm Julie. So I'm going to copy what Loretta did because I think that was fun. So I'm just going to describe it first. A physical space to record thoughts, feelings, and actions that I have every day. Then I can use it to reflect on my past and potentially grow emotionally or mentally. Yeah, it's my journal.
And the cat is lining up.
Of course, now my dog is barking. Sorry.
No, it's great. A journal and a notebook. So just continuing in the chat for all my friends in the chat, what gave, the sense that it was a journal? Julie and Loretta did an amazing job of not actually saying what the object was, but gave us cues and clues so we could start to understand the rules and boundaries. Someone said they were confused. They thought it could be a laptop. I think that's a great thought. And this is good because one thing to think of for everyone is onboarding can be a really difficult process. Like, you want to share all the information in the world, you might not know where to start. And clarifying these things for your audience is really key. So Julie, for example, with the note that they could have been confused, it could be a laptop. I think you could have maybe added this idea of like, there's an instrument that's involved with placing my thoughts onto it. And that instrument actually, is elongated, and that instrument, I put that instrument to the physical object and it creates shapes and letters and things like that. But I thought it was great. That was such a beautiful, poetic way to onboard us. Thank you for sharing. I see one more hand, and please forgive me if I don't pronounce your name correctly, and you are more than welcome to tell me how to correctly pronounce it and share that with the chat. Tashida, would you like to share?
Hi, so yeah, it's Tushita. It's totally fine. It's a weird name. It's totally fine. Oh, I'm sorry. I don't know. It's some weird filter on. I'm really sorry. I'll go ahead with the object that I have, and I'll describe the object. Let's see how many people can actually guess it. So describing it to some alien, I would say that our bodies oftentimes don't allow us to break or pull things apart, and that's why we have this one sharp object. It's very sharp and we use it to you know divide things, we can say, or we use it to cut things apart. And yeah, people are getting to it. So yeah, it's a scissor.
Nice. I love that. I think what's really interesting and what I think people are starting to catch on to is that verbs are so important to help people understand what these objects are, right? Like, what can I do with this thing? Can I lift it? Can I write on it? Can I cut with it? And that's really important to onboarding people into your world, whether your world is a phone application, whether your world is a campaign online, whether your world is a website you're designing for someone. What can someone do with this? If you're trying to tell a story about someone's portfolio, say you're designing a website for somebody, how can you find this person? Can you find this person through email? Can you hire this person to do photography? Those are really important items that should be told at the top of the website or the top of the story, so that people can start to understand how they can interact with the website or interact with the person that you're designing this website for. So starting to think a little bit about using verbs and using how people can interact and build things and create things before you start going deeper into the story. So this has all been really great. So one thing that I work in is virtual reality. So one thing I'm going to do is I'm going to tie some of these things back into the way that we here in our kind of virtual reality world or augmented reality world think about these experience design blocks. So for example, when we think about onboarding, like you all said, it can be really difficult to help explain people what's going on in a world. It can be really difficult to also help explain to people what the rules are of the world. Well, this to me feels very much like onboarding someone to a virtual reality headset. Most people haven't used one. And you're like, what does that thing do? You're like, it's like a TV that mounts on your face and you can look at things, and like making people feel very comfortable. Hey, does the fit of the virtual reality headset feel really good? Is it too tight on your head? Is the screen blurry on your eyes? All these little things we have to tweak and adjust so people can feel comfortable before they even start the virtual reality experience. Is something we as virtual reality designers and creators sort of have to think about, like, what is that onboarding to the headset itself before someone gets into the headset? So just tying it into something that I'm very familiar with, just to help give you all a little bit of context. So now we're going to move on to our second prompt. The second prompt is choose another of your 3 objects. So just any of them. Again, none of this is in any particular order. None of this has to be any specific item. And I'm just going to take a little bit of time for us to do a breathing exercise again. So I'm going to turn off my video. If the object is something you can hold in your hand, feel free to put it in your hand. If the object is something larger that you need to have close to you, feel free to just bring yourself or bring the object closer to you. And just start by closing your eyes. This time I'm going to ask you to, if you can, put one of your hands on your belly so you can feel the breath kind of moving up and down. Go ahead and take a deep breath in through your nose. This time I'm going to ask you to hold your breath in for 5 counts if you can. 1, 2, 3, 4. Might get a little uncomfortable. 5, and then slowly let that air out. We're just grounding ourselves. Maybe bounce your knees up and down if that's available to you. Maybe move your head side to side. We're going to do that one more time. Take a deep breath in through your nose. Count to the count of 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and gently let that air go. Just think about this second object that you have. Think a little bit about the building blocks. We just completed sort of the onboarding aspect of these building blocks. We're moving into the second one, which is story. So sort of open your mind up to the possibilities of story, what that could be, what that is, maybe anticipating what the prompt is. If you're feeling any anxiety or if you're feeling any tightness or anxiousness, just let that go. Maybe move your shoulders up and down, move your neck side to side. All right, gently open your eyes. For prompt 2, think about the rules that you gave us, or the usage or the significance you gave us to the first object. So for example, we talked a little bit about the donut and the sweetness of the donut and the nourishment of the donut and the way we use our mouths to put the nourishment into our bodies. We talked a little bit about scissors, how they help us cut through the world and cut things because we don't have pinchers on our bodies, like someone said. We also talked a little bit about the journal. So think about the things that we did for the first object. Now, this might feel difficult. This is not supposed to feel very easy. This might also not come to you right away, and that's okay. But begin to think about how you could create a story or an experience based on the rules, the usage, the significance of your first object with your second object. So things might not feel like they align quite right. Maybe you have a donut and a glass and you're like, I don't know how a donut and a glass would connect with each other. I don't know how to create an experience based on these 2 very different objects. And that's okay. Again, this is meant to sort of pull our design brains apart and really help us think, how can we tie certain things in? I know that as sometimes an experienced designer, I struggle with this. I'm like, the client has 7 different ideas they're trying to do, and they want, this to happen and this to happen and this to happen, and they want the story to be about this, but how can I make it all tie in a really seamless way from beginning to end, from the onboarding, the story, and the aftercare? And that's really sort of our fun challenge as designers, is to see how things are supposed to fit together in a seamless way. So I'm going to give a quick example. I currently have my first object, which is a small purple hand weight. Purple is a color that could be described as red and blue. This hand weight is 3 pounds. So for example, if I gave this hand weight to a small child, they might not be able to pick up this hand weight very easily, but if I gave it to an adult or to a growing child, they would easily be able to hold this hand weight. And so the rules around this hand weight that I spoke to is that, it's weighted. We use it to work out. Working out is something we do to exercise these bodies that we live in. And my second object is a hair tie. And a hair tie is a circular, plasticky, stretchy object that allows us to put what's called hair, which grows from the tops of our heads, sort of back out of our faces. And so I'm thinking about ways that, this hair tie and this weight could interact with each other. And I kind of realized, this second object could play with the first object by, putting itself on the object. I could actually maybe carry the weight of the object using the second object. And again, none of this has to make a lot of sense. It's really just thinking about ways two different things can connect to each other. And also thinking about different ways you can create with the two objects. Your onboarding is a foundation and your story is a building. So how can you create and build from your onboarding into your foundation? And I'm just playing with different ways that this hair tie could move and interact with the hand weight. So I'm going to turn on my video and just show. So I'm sort of like I can loop this around. Now I can play an instrument on this hand weight. Maybe it's something that I didn't think of doing before. Maybe I can use this as a holder for the hand weight. Maybe this is a way I can hang the hand weight up on the wall. Maybe there's a very specific way that I can make this look like a piece of artwork. Again, none of this has to make a ton of logical sense. It's really just breaking apart how these two objects can interact and play with each other based on the onboarding I gave an alien, right? So if anyone feels like sharing, I know this prompt can be a little difficult and a little heady, but feel free to raise your hand or share what you're doing in the chat in any way, shape, or form that feels comfortable to you. And this second slide for prompt 2 is just a way that we can kind of give ourselves a little more context. I see someone's raising their hand. Again, I may or may not be able to pronounce your name correctly, so please tell me a little bit about it. So please tell me how to correctly pronounce your name. Diwani, would you like to share with us?
Yeah, sure. I can talk about the first object. So my first object was something that is used to it's used to protect and even lubricate the skin. And my second object is something that is used to connect with people through different ways, or you can call, or you can chat, or you can even take pictures. So I guess the way I would connect those two is like maybe I can use my second object to take a picture of the first object that I use and share it with my friend who is asking me about what do I use to keep my skin moist or like young.
Yeah, that's great. I also think maybe, is there a way, is there a rule about how maybe like, does the camera need to be moistened at times and maybe you don't use this lotion, but you use something else to clean the camera? I don't know if like, your lenses need to sort of have like some special oil or some sorts, like also like, instead of just thinking of the camera as a way of mechanically taking a photo of the sunscreen, is there a way the sunscreen could also do something for the camera? Maybe not you know, in our world where sunscreen and cameras make sense, but maybe in a fantastical, let's just pretend we're living in an alien world, like how could sunscreen and cameras interact more? But thank you so much for sharing. And I think too, again, this prompt isn't meant to be easy. We're supposed to look at two different things that don't really make sense and try and put them together. So it's none of these answers are right or wrong. Oh, okay. No worries. Did you want to say anything to that though? I want to make sure I leave space for you to comment on my comment.
Let me unmute you actually. I don't know, it muted automatically. But yeah, I don't know if you want.
Okay, no, that was interesting. Like, no, I agree. But yeah, that's the best way I thought about connecting those two objects. Like, maybe call a person or message a person about that first object. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's great. Thank you so much for sharing. Thelma, would you like to share?
Yeah, I would like to share. I was saying that the first object, I would take their hand and I would put it on the object, and I would take another object and I would show them, and I would say light or weightless, and I would say heavy. And then I would take the first object and then I would look at the sun and I would move it up and down and I would say light. And then I would take something like sand or ink or anything around that is dark enough. And I would put my hand on it and I would make a mark. And then I would say, when I sleep, I see images, or I would say picture, and I would say, like, maybe look and draw a square around the atmosphere and then a square around myself and maybe a square around the other person. And I would say picture, and then I would say, I would put my hand in the ink and I would rub it on the paper and I would say right here. So the second object is a charger, and I would say, well, I feel like I used them together already, but I would say light, signal, and I would, continue in that way to kind of bring in perspective.
So your first object is something you can paint with or draw with. Your first object. Your second object is a charger, correct? I think you're muted. I wonder, if the idea is I can use painting and drawing to outline and to see things in different ways. I wonder if you can use the charger as sort of like an object that you also outline and see things in different ways. So like you're building upon the building block of that idea or rule around sort of the painting that you so beautifully described for us. Can you hear us, Thelma?
I can. I'm kind of just so the charger. So I would put it in their hands and I would use our fingers and I would connect them and I would say like signal. And I would say energy or signal, and I would say I would draw another picture And I would say signal to pictures, to share, and share. I would maybe pick up something and give the person, and I would say share.
Thank you for sharing, Thelma.
Yeah.
I just want to quickly look over at the chat and just say that, you know, for anyone who's creating any sort of moment of like these two objects connecting to each other. So I'm seeing, you know, pineapple shaped body lotion, you know, an electric guitar. So maybe there's a way the pineapple is a guitar pick. I love that idea. I love the idea of using the shape of the object to use it as something that we don't necessarily think of it as. I love the idea of like putting body lotion on our hands after playing because our fingers get really raw potentially if it's your first time playing with the guitar. I think there's lots of really great ways to think about this. And again, an experience is just a memory. So it could be two random objects and we're doing something weird with them, and that's okay. And again, you're working through this as like thinking about two very separate things that don't usually go together. You know, your objects shouldn't usually go together. If they do, great. But this is just a way to really think about how we come up with different challenges. Like when I work in XR, it's like, okay, someone puts a computer on their face, right? And then we have to start an experience that takes them to the Philippines. Like, how do I like make this headset experience of putting this headset on their faces, like make it either feel in world with this, you know, project in the Philippines? How do I help someone use a hand controller for the first time, potentially who's never been in a headset? So these things of like, I think like we so often think that the experience we're building, whether it's the video game, the phone app, the website, is going to be the best of what we want to create. And I agree. It's so important that we focus time and energy on creating those specific creative ideas that we have. But what we have to remember is they need to be sort of grounded and pillared by an onboarding and an aftercare, right? You can create the best game in the world, but if you don't necessarily teach someone the mechanisms around the game and you don't help someone understand the rules of the world, you don't help someone understand like, okay, the wizard, you know, does this and the dragon does this, then we're not necessarily giving people the opportunity to feel like they can actually belong inside the world. So a lot of like that onboarding stuff that we do, while the story is something we're more excited to do, I almost would hesitate to say a lot of the stuff that we miss in story or a lot of the things that people get confused by is because of the way we potentially don't focus also on onboarding in story. So just tying it all in. Final prompt of the day, I know we're getting a little close to time, is going to be choosing your last object. So again, this prompt is not going to be simple. This prompt might not feel like as easy as the other prompts, but this is just a way to kind of get our minds running in directions we're not used to about things we're not used to thinking about. So go ahead and take that third object. I'm going to just, whoop, whoop, my slideshow is running away without me. There we go. Go ahead and choose your final object and we're going to do a quick breath exercise. So go ahead and bring your object close to you in any way, shape, or form, or maybe have it in your hands. And this time I'm going to ask you to put your hand over your heart. That's the place we keep a lot of ourself into. And go ahead and just tell yourself it's going to be okay. Rub your hand over your heart. We're almost done with this workshop. Take a nice deep breath in through your nose, out through your mouth. This time you're going to hold your breath out for 4, 3, 2, 1, and then go ahead and take a deep breath. And breathe out. And you hold your breath for 4, 3, 2, 1, and gently open your eyes. Awesome. So this final prompt is begin to think about your final object. So now you have all 3 objects. They're like sort of placed in your space. You had like your onboarding object, your story object, and now you have your aftercare object. So begin to think about how this object can be a way to take away something from the experience, or a closure point, or a way to even move into a new dimension. Something to think about in this way would be, you know, in certain video games, there's ways that we can transport ourselves to the next level once we grab all the stars, right? So like First we learn how to make Mario jump, then we learn how to make Mario run, and then Mario runs through level 1, and then we create the very end of level 1, and we're now going to jump into a new portal to level 2. Well, that could be a version of aftercare. Hey, you finished a level. We're going to teach you new things. We're going to jump into a new dimension, but we want to reward you. And we want to give you a special show or a special sequence, a special closure point. The end of a level is also a closure point. Maybe you're taking away 15 stars and 150 coins. Those are the takeaway items in the aftercare part. Maybe it's a phone app. Hey, you signed up for the phone app. Would you like to sign up for the newsletter? Hey, by the way, you get to invite 5 friends for free and you get 50% off your subscription. These are all takeaway items. These are all aftercare items. So start thinking about how this last object, which again, doesn't necessarily have to make sense right away. Aftercare doesn't make sense right away sometimes, but we sort of have to use this as a puzzle to say like, okay, maybe, you know, the aftercare item, mine is like a little yellow bowl. Maybe it acts as a hat. And maybe the final piece of this project for me is I've created this little artistic human with a little hat. And the aftercare of this hat is the final piece of this moment. And I have first created this hand weight, which was really heavy. And then I put like this band on it and the band allowed it to play. But then I saw this really great little face it made. So then I decided, oh, this last and final object as a completion point or a closure point of this object of these 3 things is this hat. And now this is the full experience of these 3 objects that weren't really ever supposed to come together. And just to let you know, I didn't do anything with the 3 objects beforehand. I really have just been iterating with you all with my 3 objects. So just play with them, see what you come up with. I know we're getting close to time, so I'm just going to ask if anyone is ready to share. Feel free to share. You have these 3 objects for the rest of your life, I'm hoping, so you can continue to play and work with them. This doesn't have to be the last time you're feeling rushed to complete the last and final prompt. So if anyone would like to raise their hand and share, if anyone wants to share in the chat, I saw Grace shared something. Grace, do you want to share a little bit with us?
Yeah, sure. I just to make it quick, 'cause I know there's other people raising their hand as well. I had a real Akuma plush, AirPods with a cinnamon roll case. It's like little cinnamon roll, and then I had washi tape. I guess to wrap them all together, I was gonna use this. Usually, washi tape is like a decorative item, so decorate them, like decorate the ears, decorate the borders. Yeah, and I was just thinking, just like wrap them all together as a little like artifact or a little decoration.
Thank you for sharing.
Yeah,
I see someone's raising their hand. Gurjun, you go ahead and unmute yourself. I'm so sorry. If you could tell me how to pronounce your name correctly, I would love to be able to do that for you.
Michaela, it's Gurjinder.
Gurjinder, thank you. Oh, sorry. I think you're muted again.
Yeah. Okay, we're good. We're good to go. Okay. So my first object was like this little paint palette that I had. It's for watercolor, but I usually use it for acrylic, honestly. And then the second one was a ruler that I also had on my desk. And my third object was the AirPods case. And so my way of connecting these objects is that I use the paint palette to put paints in here and I mix them together. And after that, I use my ruler to maybe I'm drawing something on a piece of paper, or maybe I'm on a paint canvas itself and I need to draw straight lines, or maybe I need to make little details. So I use the ruler to help me do that. And then the third thing is the AirPods case. And I think the way I would end this is that I'm using the first 2 objects to kind of pick apart and bring the ideas that exist in my mind outside into the real world. And so after doing that, I think using my AirPods, I bring that kind of a piece to myself that I cut off from the rest of the world, and I keep myself to my ideas so they can flow better, and so that I can create something that's much more focused and much more worthwhile.
Yeah, so your AirPods, for you to be able to focus on what the other 2 projects do, the AirPods as like an aftercare item is a way for you to sort of mute the rest of the noise and distractions around you. And it's sort of like a closure point. So you can really hone in on those last 2 those last two objects that you were focused on and getting them connected. That's a great use of aftercare. Something I can think of that's similar to that would be, you know, when you're playing a game and suddenly like you've won maybe like a specific thing and it rewards you, and it might not feel like something that's super important to every other player in the game, but it's something really specific to your player, right? Something that was made just for you as a hidden Easter egg for those designers. You chose this character, that character, that character, you have this thing, this thing, this thing, and because you did this specific thing, here's a special object to help you move through your space. So I think that's great. And a form of aftercare. Care is a way to show that you're thinking about the person, not just from onboarding. Hey, I can teach you how to run. I can teach you how to jump. Or, hey, I can teach you how to, you know, call a taxi cab using this app called Uber. It's also Uber saying, hey, you took an Uber. And hey, now you have Uber rewards. If you would like to use Uber rewards, what would you like to do? Donate to a charity? Would you like to create, you know, 5% off your next ride? That's all forms of aftercare, you know, as an experience, as a reward to your experience. Awesome. I know we have some really great shares in the chat. I'm just going to quickly tie this into XR. This is like taking off the headset. After someone gets completely immersed in the world of the Philippines and they have to take off the headset, what is there to greet them? You know, is it that, oh gosh, they're like in this really harshly lit space and it's sort of hard for them to see? Or is the space dimly lit? Is that a form of aftercare that we're thinking about when someone takes off a headset? Are we creating a safe, maybe quiet space for them to go to reflect? Do we hand them maybe a journal and ask them to write their notes so that there's a way for them to process the experience they just saw? So aftercare can really exist in so many different forms. One thing I just want to touch upon briefly is safety and communication. So as designers, as creators, we all come from different backgrounds, different familiarities. And how does your certain familiarity with specific objects impact the way that you explain and build the rules and the story and the aftercare of a world? So maybe I'm not someone who's super well versed in fantasy mythology, but someone wants to create fantasy mythology games. Well, maybe I don't know what a warlock is, and I need some way of understanding what that is. So don't just assume that everyone knows exactly what you know as a designer. Don't just assume, you know, that your client knows exactly what you're speaking about. A part of onboarding and story and aftercare could also be how you're presenting yourself to a client or a job. How are you onboarding a client to your skill sets? How are you telling them the story of what you do and delivering to them that product? How are you asking them, you know, hey, how did it go? Do you have any feedback for me? That's a form of aftercare. So these sort of ideas, while they can grow in our designer world, they can also grow in our career world too, as we're building out, you know, portfolios, as we're building out networking. So I think it's safe to say that communication is important, and the comfortability of your user, your audience, your participant, and the safety of those people are really important. And I think designing onboarding and designing aftercare being just as impactful as designing story can help alleviate a lot of these stressor points. I'm thinking about BIPOC, I'm thinking about LGBTQIA, I'm thinking about inclusivity, I'm thinking about diversity. I'm also thinking about, you know, rides like roller coasters if you're into architectural design. Buildings, how many chairs are you designing inside of a building so people can feel like they can safely relax inside of your building if it's supposed to be a space that's supposed to be community led, things like that. So yeah, I tied it into apps, games, websites, designs, graphic campaigns. I know you all are many different designers, so I know we spoke a little bit about that. So I just want to say thank you so much for having me. These are other themes I sort of touched upon. I just want to put them in a slide if you want to take quick notes on that. And I know we're getting close to time. So are there any questions? That's me. You can find me here. Any questions? You can raise your hand. You can share in the chat.
Well, we have time for a few questions, and then we'll take our group photo in our Instagram wave for our Instagram story. Yeah, this is great. I love how interactive this was. And yes, Monor, this is actually streamed on our YouTube, so it'll be available afterwards. And I'll share the link in the event discussions channel in Design Buddy, so make sure to join that too.
Yeah, and I just want to give a quick shout out to Toshida for sharing more, Bono for sharing more, all of you sharing more in the chat. I'm sorry I didn't get to comment, but I really appreciate you all sharing what you did, and anyone who commented on their shares, thank you. Yeah, and if there's no questions, I mean, feel free to email me. Like Grace said, this is available on YouTube. And Grace, I think without further ado, if you want to take our group photo, or if you want to do anything else for Design Buddies.
Yeah, for sure. Just have our group photo and wave and host a few minutes afterwards for a quick retro. So I'm gonna give it a few seconds so people turn on your camera. So I'll count down and wait for everyone to turn their camera. Feel free to take a photo of your 3 objects as well if you want to hold them up in our photo to make it more fun. I have bear, cinnamon roll, and washi tape. So my camera's really bright because I got a new camera, so can't really see it, but that's okay. So I'm gonna count down soon, wait for everyone to turn the camera and take a photo of your 3 objects that you have, or try to hold as many as you can up. I might hold a bear and another Rilakkuma. Awesome. Cool. Again, in a few seconds, I'm gonna count down 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. I love seeing all your objects. 5, 4. I love the hat too. 3. Is that Pusheen? No, that's not Pusheen. 3, 2, 1. All right. There's still some people like smile. Okay, cool. I got it. Thank you all for coming. Oh, we also do it. Wait, before that, you guys are gonna go on our Instagram story. So at design.buddies, wave, dance, do a little motion with your 3 objects, like whether it's waving it around, you can dab, you can dance, you can swim, anything you want. So this is gonna be just for a fun little Instagram story like we do at all of our events. Hello, buddies. We are having our 3 objects we told a story with experience, building blocks of experience design. Thank you all for coming. It's great seeing all our objects, and happy Saturday. Cool. This is on our Instagram story. And yeah, so this concludes our event. Thank you all for coming. As always, I say this after every single event, but stay positive and test negative. Thank you very much, and I will stop streaming on YouTube.